Hey, Savvy Social Workers. So, today I'm going to be presenting a study tip that I feel like will be useful in the process of you studying for the ASWB exam. It was personally very useful for me, so I just want to share that with you. And so, it is called the Feynman technique. And basically, you just pretend to teach your topic or some content to someone who knows nothing about it, or it could also be someone who does know about it, like a colleague or whatever. But it's just to get your brain in the practice of recalling the information for yourself. So it's better for you to teach someone who doesn't know anything about it and try to get them to explain it back to you. But even if it is like a colleague who knows, then they will be able to kind of critique your explanation as well. So either way, it is good. So we're going to go a little bit more in detail about the Feynman technique. So this is it in a visual. It says follow this four-step system to build a deeper understanding of any subject matter. And we're going to do each one of these separately, but basically you start by getting to know your topic or the content. So you want to read, write, listen, research, create, practice, basically learn the material how you like, or I will tell you not just how you like, but how your brain learns best. So this is where it's also good to know what your learning style is. Some people learn better by reading. Some have to write it down. Some, like to watch, all those things. So get to know your topic. So whatever you're working on, you want to watch videos on it. You want to research it. You want to take notes, read different things about the subject matter. And then you want to try to teach the topic. Find someone who is unfamiliar with the topic and teach them. But again, like I said, for this exam, you could also find a colleague who is familiar with the content or that's studying with you as well. And y'all can try to teach it to each other as well as critique the information. And then after you have taught the topic or tried to explain the topic to someone, then you want to identify the gaps. And so this is where you return to the material and look for answers, improvements, and new ideas, especially on how to simplify the information that you have taught. Okay. And so after you identify the gaps, then you start simplifying them using analogies to continue to distill the information further. So now let's take this step by step. The first step is you want to study by unit and by topic of the ASWB exam. So we know the ASWB exam is broken down into 4 units. So for each study session, you are going to pick a unit and then break it down into however many topics from that unit that you plan to study that day. Using the KSAs from the ASWB online website is good for this if you are trying to create a study guide or just a study plan to have a way of organized studying. Selecting a specific concept or content to study compels you to be intentional about what you do not know. Remember that you have to start small. Work on smaller, more defined concepts of what might reliably be found on the exam. So don't try to go when you're, let's just say, studying unit 2. Don't try to go and study all the diagnoses in the DSM-5, okay? Just do your research and find out what is the most common diagnoses that are being asked on the exam, that people are seeing on the exam, and start there. Start small with them. So say I'm going to study um, a couple of the most common diagnoses. And a topic can be, what are the signs and symptoms of these? What are the medications that are prescribed for these specific diagnoses? Not the whole DSM-5. Same thing with Unit 1, which is a lot to navigate through. So basically just taking it unit and topic by topic. Okay, so this day I'm going to study theories with ages and stages. This day I'm going to study cultural concepts, whatever that is, but make sure you are studying and breaking it down topically and starting small. Step 2, when you are trying to explain it to yourself or teach it to someone else, it is good to start by writing topic summaries and notes. and then you want to teach yourself aloud without your notes, and then you want to have discussions with your friends or colleagues. And this is where small study groups are really, really good in this matter, because you have other people to discuss it with. So write out the topic summaries and some notes, and then teach them to yourself out loud. One of the things I did when I was studying was I bought a separate voice recorder, and I would teach it to the voice recorder, and then I would play it back to listen to it for myself. A classic learning mistake is reading an article or a textbook and considering ourselves to be learning, right? So a lot of times we think that when we are reading something that our learning is complete, when in reality, reading is not understanding. So that's why, to my people who just say I'm going to read the book and that's it, it does take a little bit more than that, because just reading it is not understanding. You know, we might have to take notes while we're reading, okay? But true understanding requires a more active process like teaching. So again, start out by formally teaching yourself. Write out a summary in your own words without looking at your own notes, or like I said, explain it to yourself out loud. And then after you do that, you can take it to the next level by teaching other people. Make sure when you are writing it and you're reading it to yourself out loud, or studying it or explaining it out loud, that you want to simplify it and use plain language, so that when you are presenting it to other people, that they are able to understand it. Especially if it's somebody that's not in the field, you want to be able to explain this in the simplest language possible. That is going to make it easier for you to retain as well. During this process of step 2, explaining it to yourself and teaching it to someone else, it also helps you to build confidence, okay? Because when you truly understand a concept or something like that, it basically makes you feel like, okay, I know what I know, what I know. And so when you're being asked about these certain concepts or this certain content on the exam, and you know that you know that you know, that's going to build confidence in the answer that you choose. And usually something is going to kind of click, when you see the content and you recall the content, and you're able to kind of filter through it within the exam question. It's just going to click. So you do this when you're learning the content by explaining it to yourself and then trying to discuss it or teach it to someone else. Now, step 3 in this technique is where we said that you identify the gaps, and then you're going to return to your materials. Learning should be iterative, okay? So which just means repetitive. So when gaps in our knowledge arise and our expectations aren't quite right, revisiting our primary and secondary sources can help solidify what we're learning. The more you refine your explanations, the more your understanding will deepen. So rather than viewing learning as a one and done, this step gives you permission to continuously refresh your knowledge, because you're identifying the gaps. After you try to teach it to someone else, you identified the gaps in how much you thought you knew, or what you taught, or what didn't sound right out loud. And then you go back and you may look at the information again. And so that is going to help you with explaining it. Okay. So when we learn passively, committing details to memory, um, it's more challenging, okay? So this also is going to actively engage you, because instead of just learning passively by reading, when you are actively creating your own summaries and reasonings and drawing intentionally from the original information to better understand and fill in the blind spots, you can more readily commit knowledge to your long-term memory. So learning actively instead of passively. So this is a part of, again, teaching it to yourself and then going back to the material to fill in the blind spots or fill in the gaps instead of just saying, okay, I read it, I understand it, I know it. Make sure that you are actively engaging the content. So doing this also expands your knowledge base. Okay, so looking through a chapter in, let's just say, Apgar's book might feel like a different language for the first time around. But let's just say the second time it becomes more clear. And then the third time, with a strong base already, you pick up the nuances that you couldn't possibly have seen before. So going back to the material a time or two also kind of reinforces this. So going back after you kind of study it and write your notes and teach it to yourself and then identify, okay, so I didn't really understand this as clearly as I did. Then you go back and you fill in the blanks, and that is going to expand your knowledge and also commit to your long-term memory more than it would if you just kind of read it and took a few notes and kept going. Now, the last step is to simplify your explanations and create your own analogies. The Feynman techniques involve simplifying our initial explanations and refining our understanding through simple analogies. Okay, so just remember that simplicity is a proxy for understanding. So the more simple something is, the easier it is going to be for you to understand. The easier it is for you to understand, the more clear you're going to be able to recall it, retain it, those things. And so analogies are easier to recall and explain. So that's why step 4 says after you have done all these other things, it is good to kind of create analogies. Memorization is not understanding. So when we can't rely on big words that make us sound smart per se, we have to distill what we truly know to be to the most basic form. Okay. So this is where the true understanding of the content is going to take place, by you knowing it in just basic form. So making it as simple as possible. So that's why a lot of times you will see in my video that I just get plainly to the point. I'm not trying to use all these acronyms. I'm not trying to give you all these different steps, because I feel like simplicity is a proxy for better understanding. Okay. When you understand a challenging concept, analogies allow you to create a shorthand for recalling it quickly and explaining it to others clearly. For some people, this is where the acronyms come in handy for them. To each their own with that. Again, for me, I feel like it can make things more confusing, because you have to know when and how to use them, but what type of questions and situations and all of that, which makes it something else that you have to learn in addition to this exam. One of the things that I do recommend is making examples of the content that are personally relevant to you. That can be helpful when you're trying to understand a concept or a cluster of information. So especially in unit 1, where you go through the theories, just think of someone who matches each stage and put their name by it. Or when you're going through certain diagnoses in unit 2, or if you're going through personality disorders, anybody that comes to mind that may not be, officially diagnosed with the disorder, but someone whose behaviors remind you of the disorder or the diagnosis or anything like that, I definitely would assign those people personally to those to help me recall. So while some people can use different analogies to recall and explain the information, some people use mnemonics, things like that. Again, for me, I make examples of the content that personally relate to things and situations in my personal arena that I can easily recall the information to. So again, I hope this little quick study tip was helpful to you. Again, you can let me know in the comments if it's something that you use already, or if it's something that you can use or you feel like will work for you. It's definitely a start. I will bring some other study tips, but this is one that I felt like would be very good for y'all, especially for my people who are trying to either get started, or let's just say you're already taking the exam and you don't know, okay, where do I start back? How do I start back up studying if I've already taken it and I haven't been successful? Using the Feynman technique is a good way to kind of jump back in there, or just to organize yourself at a steady pace and to keep track of what you're studying, as well as how you're actually studying it, by going through these 4 steps. So again, these are the 4 steps. You can pause it and take notes, whatever it is, but basically you are just trying to teach yourself the content that you're studying in simpler terms, so that it is easier for you to retain as well as recall for the ASWB exam. Let me know in the comments if this video was helpful to you and for you, and let's continue to get those passes the savvy way.